How you doing, everybody? This is Jay Nando of Alamo True Metal coming to you from the bowels of the Rock Box, San Antonio, Texas, on a rockin', soon-to-be rockin' Sunday night, because tonight OTEP Shamaya and her band are headlining here at the Rock Box, and I have the pleasure of going into the pit with the singer herself, OTEP Shamaya. How are you today? Welcome.
I'm very well, thank you.
Welcome back to San Antonio.
Appreciate
Absolutely.
It. We love San Antonio.
Yes, of course, the band released Cult 45, I believe your 8th studio album 9 days ago on July 27th. We're going to get into that shortly, but as far as the tour, I know this is like your 4th or 5th Texas stop in a row, I believe. And for the most part, even on the previous leg, you've been playing so many shows, 4 or 5 nights in a row, one day off.
Yep.
4 or 5 nights in a row, one day off.
Yep.
How have you guys been holding up? How has everything been going?
Oh, it's been going great. Normally, this is actually pretty easy for us. We'll usually do like 13 shows in a row and a day off, or we'll do like 10 shows in a row and a day off. So 5 shows in a row and a day off. That's like a vacation almost, you know. But the best thing about it is the crowds have been passionate. The fans have been, it's just been insane. The houses have been packed. We've had people loving the new record, so it's been a lot of fun. And I don't think we've had this kind of fan response with regards to immediately latching on to a record and really falling in love with it. Since maybe my first album. Yeah. So this one feels really special. I think it's because of the era that we're living in currently, unfortunately, and I think that it's also because we did this ourselves. Like, I co-produced the record with my guitar player Aristotle, who's multi-talented instrumentalist, plays everything. You can throw any instrument in the world at him, and he'll just be like, oh, I can play that. And we have our rhythm section, Justin Keir on drums, and Drew Barnes on bass. I mean, those guys are just fantastic, and they bring in their own styles and ideas, and that's what, when we sat down to talk to people about, as a band, when we sat down to talk about how we wanted to do the record, the only rule was there's no rules. Let the music take you where it wants to take you. And I wanted each instrument to have its own voice so that each player shined in their own particular way. And I think we accomplished that in a very powerful way. It's just been, it's just even as, you love everything that you create normally. You should anyway if you're an artist. Like, you should love everything you create, otherwise you didn't put enough into it. But there's something really special and magical about this record. And I'm real proud of it.
It's no secret OTEP is considered a political band. Of course, those of you who have listened to our music over the years, and even though this record is no exception, you're tackling various issues from politics, past and present, to issues such as the immigration, rape and sexual harassment, those sorts of things. For the sake of time and brevity, is there one issue that you tackle on Cult 45 that stands out or means more to you, as a little slightly more than the others, and why?
Well, not really. I think because we're not the band that does one killer and all filler songs. Every song has a meaning to it. But I think Invisible People is very important because of what Trader Trump is doing with regards to immigration policies and deporting people who've been here for years and years and years, tearing apart families. When people say that isn't American, I have to respectfully disagree, because it is very American. We've been doing that since the first Europeans landed on this continent. It started with Native Americans, or the indigenous folks who lived here first, who, when Columbus was lost at sea and ran into ground while he was trying to find a quicker spice route or whatever, trading route. He saw brown people and was like, oh, look, Indians, right? That's because he was trying to find a quicker route to India. And then we go on, we venture further into our dark past, and we see that how we would own people in this country. And we would take away, slave owners would take a husband, and one slave owner would take a wife, and the other slave owners would take the children. So, and even during World War II, when we had Japanese internment camps, and it was Japanese American internment camps too during World War II, but there were no German American internment camps. And why? Why is that? Because there's systematic racism built into the spine of our country, and it is not it is my duty as a citizen of this country to look back at how far we've come. From our forefathers were not, they were very flawed men who borrowed very great ideas. You know, democracy was invented by the ancient pagan Greeks. The Senate was invented by the Etruscans, who then the Romans borrowed that from them. Further, Benjamin Franklin used to visit a lot with the Iroquois Federation, where all the chiefs would get together and decide what the next decision should be for their particular tribe. And the one thing they left out was the tribes would say, whatever decision we make, we're going to look 7 generations ahead. And I think that's a really smart way to do it, right? You say, well, like, whatever decision we're going to make now, how's it going to affect 7 generations from now? And so I think invisible people is very important. I think trigger warning, which tackles rape culture in this country, especially that, I can't remember his name. I don't even want to say his name, to be honest. But he actually, this young rich kid got this girl drunk at a party, then took her out back on their university, took her out behind a dumpster and raped her. And allegedly was saying Trump slogans as he was doing this. And it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody when you've got a guy who, it's hard to call him a guy, this colostomy bag that's sitting in the White House, when he's admitted that that's what he does. He sexually assaults women, and they let you do it because you're a star. Well, I live in Los Angeles. Nobody ever thought that Trump was a star. Nobody. He was a D-list reality TV star is what he was, who made his bones by saying, "You're fired." And somehow he convinced some people to think that he'd be some kind of job creator, even though he filed bankruptcy 11 times, which means he didn't have to pay construction workers who built his buildings. And those folks, what are they going to do? You know, I mean, I got family with construction workers. Wake up in the morning, digging ditches, building houses. 6 o'clock, 6 a.m. They come home at 6 p.m. What does he know about any of that? Nothing. All he knows is about cheating people out of, hardworking, working class folks out of their hard-earned pay. That's what he knows. I think shelter in place also is very important to me because of all the mass shootings that have occurred in this country. I mean, certain statistics suggest that there have been more children that have been killed by gun violence in this country than U.S. troops in combat. And that's a national shame. I mean, we have to decide in this country, what do we care about more, our children or our guns? Especially an amendment that was written in the 1700s. 300 years ago it was written, when African American men were still considered 3/5 of a person. We're still holding on to that. When the forefathers put that amendment together, they basically were just holding a hand cannon that shot one time, and maybe you could get 1 or 2 shots off in a minute or 2. And now you have AR-15 rifles which fire, 45 rounds per minute, and each round travels 3,000 feet per second. So I think it's important that I'm a Second Amendment liberal. I believe in guns. I come from a military family. I come from a law enforcement family. But common sense gun laws are important, especially when our children are dying and teachers are dying. And when a soldier gets killed in combat, they at least get combat pay. The family does. When a teacher dies in school shootings, there is nothing. So they end up losing. That family loses that salary. They lose not only that they lose their loved one, which is devastating enough, but they also lose that extra income that was protecting their family. And anytime any sort of common sense gun legislation tries to get passed, the NRA steps up and says no. And for me, my personal belief is that the NRA may have started out as an advocacy group for gun owners, but now they're just a lobbyist for weapons manufacturers. And in fact, they make money when there's more shootings. They make money when there's more murders. To me, that's a terrorist organization because they keep people scared, they keep people frightened, and they make money off of that. And so we tackle that with Shelter in Place. And I guess another song that is important to me is Boss, because it's challenging people to defy gender roles. I get a lot of even women who will come up to me and they say, "Oh, OTEP, you're a boss-ass bitch." And I'll just think about it for a second. I'm like, well, why can't I just be a boss? Why do we got to genderize being a boss? you know. So that's why I wanted to write that song. And the chorus is, you know, I'm not a boss bitch, I'm just a boss bitch. You know.
I like that part.
Yeah.
You've said before that I watched the documentary that accompanies the new album, and you've said that the new record is not a 100% indictment and blasting of the president or the present administration, but it's more an empowering record to uplift people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious as to, theoretically speaking, if Hillary had won, how much different would this new recording effort have been?
I mean, there's still evil in the world. I tell you, our country would be a lot different if Hillary had won. We wouldn't be having this sort of rise of hate groups that are springing up all over our country. I mean, there was a newspaper in Virginia that ran a front page ad as a recruitment for the Ku Klux Klan. Now, when was the last time that they were brave enough to do some shit like that? When it started when you had that giant orange bloviating colostomy bag saying there were good people on both sides of a neo-Nazi rally, and the people that were opposing them. No, there weren't. Anybody, if you consider yourself, if you think that there are good people that think that they're superior because they have a melanin deficiency, then there's something mentally wrong with you. And the fact that these idiots are waving swastika flags when the United States military kicked the shit out of the Nazis in World War II, the fact that you have the Klan waving the Confederate flag, which isn't even the actual flag of the Confederacy, it's a flag of a particular battle regiment in the Confederacy. Again, that's a flag of treason against the United States of America. Again, the United States military kicked the shit out of them too. And these people are in love with being losers. Like you lost. You lost twice. You're gonna lose again. Like you may have your day in the sun for like a second, but you're not gonna. It won't last. It won't. There's two. I mean, a resident chump. That's what I call him because he was selected, not elected. He lost the popular vote just to Hillary by 3 million votes. He won the Electoral College, which was invented to help slave owners, which is ironic, by 77,000 votes. So, what we would have if we had President Hillary Clinton, we'd have a no-fly zone in Syria, where we wouldn't have this refugee crisis. All the refugees would be still in a safe space in that area, and any Russian 1980 Russian MiG or whatever the fuck they're flying over there from the 80s or early 90s, any one of them tried to fly over these refugee camps, these no-fly zones, the United States Air Force would blow them right out of the sky. Same thing was, you got what's happening in Syria is you have Iran, Syria, and the Russians fighting against these rebels who are trying to overthrow Assad. And the man who sits in the White House, who masturbates to Vladimir Putin every fucking day, is siding with those fuckers. And when was that ever okay? Like why is that okay? And some of these people who, and this is the reason why we named the record Cult 45, because they react like a cult. All they can do is regurgitate whatever he says. Fake media, fake news, bullshit, dude. No, everything that you called fake news, the special counsel, Robert Mueller, and his team have all proven to be true. And he's so worried now that 5 of his people that have all pleaded guilty are going to flip on him. And that might include endangering his son, old Don Jr., who's about as sharp as a cotton ball. They've all committed treason, and that used to be a hanging offense. But we have a spineless Republican-owned Congress that won't hold him to his feet to the fire. Just imagine this. Imagine this was a Barack Obama, and Barack Obama had conspired with the Russians to win an election. And not only that, he had 3 wives, with 5 children by 3 different wives. Would he even get elected dog catcher? No, he wouldn't. Hillary Clinton, if she had 5 children by 3 different men, what would they even consider her? They would slut-shame her into the ground. But she's not that. She comes from a working-class family. I think her father was a plumber. She's devoted her life to public service. Even now, she could be off someplace in the Caribbean somewhere in a giant yacht, like enjoying her 60s, and like enjoying her life, because she's devoted so much of it to this country. But she's not. She's actually trying to help those children that Trump has torn away from their families. She's down there trying. Nobody else. There's not one other politician or ex-politician that's down there doing what she's doing, and she's down there trying to reunite those kids with their parents. and people still have this thing about her, and I don't understand it. She's probably the most qualified person to ever run for president ever. Just from her education, from her background, from being a senator to Secretary of State to being an active First Lady while she was in the White House. Was she perfect? Is anybody perfect? No. Politicians are dirty fuckers. That's what they do. You know, I mean, being in politics is dirty. You wrestle with pigs, you're gonna get muddy. That's how it is. But it's about the platform that I'm concerned with. People say, oh, you know, not all Democrats are good people and not all Republicans are bad people. No, that's fine. I'll concede that to you. But it's the platform that they have to. When you decide to be a Democrat or Republican, you take an oath to that, not only to the Constitution, but you take an oath to the party platform. And the party platform for the Democrats is all about working class people and bottom up. We're a bottom up society. That's what America is. The Republican Party is top down. Rich corporations, and then fuck the poor and fuck the working class. And that's what they're doing, and that's what they do every time. Trickle-down economics, voodoo economics, all that bullshit never worked. Every time there's been a Democrat in the presidency, in the White House, we've had a surplus. They fixed the budget, people earn more money, working class people are making more money, which means they spend more money, which means the economy gets better. So, going back to your original question, is there things still to talk about? Well, the other things that I address on the album with regards to rape culture in this country, gender roles, LGBTQ rights, marginalized groups and how they're still fighting for equality, Black Lives Matter, where we have cops murdering unarmed kids at traffic stops just because they're black. I mean, there's something that there's always going to be something to fight for. I'm hoping one day we'll all forget this tribalism that we seem to be so addicted to, and we start to realize that we're all one nation and that we're all brothers and sisters and that we should be taking care of each other and watching out for each other.
When I wanted to ask, when Rob Halford came out some 20-25 years ago, I think for the most part it's safe to say it was met with a collective, so what, he's still the greatest singer of all time, one of, by the metal community. He certainly probably wasn't the first homosexual metal musician to come out, and you certainly won't be the last, I'm guessing.
I hope not.
Did you have any similarities with, what kind of, when you've been like that for, of course, for such a long time, even before you were a musician, what kind of feedback, good and negative, have you received in the metal community or just in public in general? Have you received anything that stands out as far as reaction from? I know it's kind of a broad question.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you one of the most I think incredible moments in my life was touring with Judas Priest on Ozfest, and we would tour down into the Deep South, and if they saw a man walking down the street in some of these cities in Alabama or Mississippi or wherever, where they're still trying to do gay conversion therapies and shit like that. If they saw a man walking down the street wearing all leather and trying to pick up another man, I think they'd have a very different response than what they would give Rob Halford. Whenever Rob Halford came on stage, there wasn't anything but screams of joy. Like, people were so happy to see him, so happy to listen to that man sing. He still has just an incredible voice.
That it, of course, didn't matter what his preference was.
Nobody even cared.
Right.
All they wanted to hear was the songs, and they wanted to see the performance. For me, it's been a little different with regards to I've always been out. I never hid it. It's just somebody once saw me with a girl, and they were like, "Oh, are you bisexual? Are you gay? What are you?" And I'm like, "I'm a lesbian. That's what I am." And so, in the beginning, it was pretty rough, but the glorious thing that I've noticed is how comfortable gay and the members of the LGBT community feel comfortable and safe at our shows. They come to our shows, they bring their husbands, they bring their wives, transgender folks come, they come as themselves, living their authentic lives, and they feel powerful about it. And that is probably one of the biggest blessings I have as a singer and as an activist, to see those folks rising up. As far as negativity, Equal Rights, Equal Lefts, which was on our last record. That was based on an actual event where a man I was with an ex-girlfriend at the time. We were in Hawaii, which is a very liberal state, so it was extremely unexpected. We just got done surfing, and I felt this big, like, pat on my back. I turned around, and this guy about 6'2", standing in front of me. He's like, "Happy Father's Day." And it was Father's Day, so I was like, "Thank you." And then he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were a man. And he was wearing, like, he was just wearing, like, no shirt, and he had, like, these kind of, like, man boobs. And so I was like, "Hey, it's no problem, man, no worries. I thought you were a woman with the man titties. I was going to tell you, this isn't a topless beach." And he's like, "Oh, you're one of those, huh?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, I am. I'm one of those." And so he goes, "You believe," he took a step back and he raised his right fist up. He said, "Oh, so you believe in equal rights." So there is a darkness within me when anybody steps to me like that. Oh, yeah. So I took a step back and I brought my left up and I said, "Yeah, I believe in equal lefts too." And he stood there for a second and, we kind of squared off, and then he just turned around and he walked back to his old man motorcycle, and he got on his old man motorcycle and drove away. And that was the last I heard of him. But, all the surf instructors came running over because they all were like really, they were so swell. They were such nice guys. And they were like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm fine, man, no problem." And then he's like, they were like, "Oh," and they was like, "Oh, leave it to OTEP to pick a fight with the one guy that actually will fight on the beach." I said, "Well, he didn't fight me. He kept walking. He sure did. He didn't come back either, because we stayed there."
Yeah.
But listen, look, this world is hard. Is a hard world. If you can find somebody that can put up with your shit, and you can put up with their shit, and you can find some love in there somewhere, why does it matter? Why does it matter what gender they are, or if they're overweight or skinny, or if they're two people who are disabled, or what does it matter? Like if somebody can find love in this ugly world sometimes, then why not? Whose business is it? Marriage is a contract anyway. That's what it is. It's just a legal contract. That's what it is. And so if people want to do that to themselves, to each other, then why not? Why is it such a big deal? I don't know. The last time I experienced something like that was right before tour, where we had a street preacher. I was with my godchildren, and he had a sign up that said "God hates" and the F word, right? And he put that like right in front of me as I was walking past him. So I moved the sign out of the way, and then he told me I was going to hell and all this stuff. And then I was like, okay. And he's quoting Leviticus at me, and I'm like, okay, man. Well, you want to go biblical? We can go biblical. You shaved your beard. That's against in Leviticus. That's an abomination to God. You cut your hair. That's an abomination to God. That shirt you're wearing is a multi-fabric blend. That's an abomination to God. It's all in Leviticus. He's got a tattoo. I said, that's also an abomination to God. He said, well, wouldn't you go? And then he said, oh, are these your children? If they're your children, they're going to go to hell. So I told my godchildren to step back, and I walked around to the other side, and I put my finger right on his eyelash, and I said, you say one more thing about my children,